Malcolm Woolmore runs Lyndale Nurseries, New Zealand's largest propagation nursery. Malcolm began working at Lyndale when he was 13 years old and eventually became its owner.
Lyndale Nurseries is a specialised propagator of outdoor woody trees and shrubs predominantly. So saying we do a few perennials, so that covers the whole gambit from New Zealand native plants right through from the pretty exotics that people have in their gardens in town. So we have specialised in that area of actually taking a plant and producing a lot more of it. So that might be from tissue culture, might be from cuttings, might be from seed. So that's basically our option. We grow about 3 million young plants a year. Once upon a time we used to be able to think we grew one for every New Zealander, but we've dropped back a bit and New Zealand's grown a bit. So we sit around 3 million units into the New Zealand market. Our customers are a whole network of nurseries that have no profile in New Zealand. When people think of nurseries, they think of Mitre 10, Palmers, Kings, Oderings, that sort of garden group. We don't sell to any of those people. We sell to people that sell to them. So we've taken an area of the nursery industry, which is propagating plants, and we've specialised in that. The grade of plant that we sell is called a liner. So that's a young plant that is ready to move on to another stage and grow bigger. This nursery dates back to 1960, where it was a one-man band in New Lynn, hence its name, Lyndale. It was started by a lady called Nolan Parr, who the nursery industry was a very male-dominated industry in those days, and it still predominantly is, but much more so in those days. And Nolan was a very clever businesswoman and a very good nursery person. Carved a very successful business in a world that didn't really want to know about her as a nurseryman. And I stumbled across Nolan when my mum and dad said, go and get a job after school type thing to buy a new yacht sail. So I walked down the road and I think it was the second nursery I knocked on the door and Nolan said, yes, I've got a job for you. Our biggest challenge is what to grow, to predict where the public taste is going to end up. And that's my argument for reading ladies' fashion magazines. I spend a lot of time looking at colour trends, fashion design, architectural trends. That's got a huge bearing on what plants are going to be in demand in the future, because we have to look maybe as much as 4 or 5 years ahead to try and get our production systems up to spec to produce the numbers that we think are going to be required. So there's a lot of scope to get it horribly wrong. We're part of global trends very much, and it seems to be a trend that sweeps the world. Sometimes we're at the cutting edge of it, and sometimes we follow along blithely. And you never really know which one's going to be in front. What this is all about is deflasking plants from tissue culture. So plants can be propagated, we call them in vitro. So that means that a micro cutting or a little tiny cutting is taken and put onto agar. So agar is impregnated into these pots and little micro cuttings are set into them. It's quite a lengthy process and quite labour intensive. This is from a New Zealand laboratory. We specialise in taking those little babies, which are in a very protected environment, and turning them into something in the real world where they can turn into real plants as we know them. Every plant's got a unique story about propagating, and our job is to know that unique story and to figure out how to propagate it. And this particular one is all about taking a little cluster of buds, dividing them up with a scalpel, and putting them onto that agar, and hey presto, if you get everything else right, you grow a plant. One of the big pluses of a plant in tissue culture is that it's recognised around the world that it's in a sterile condition. So biosecurity regulations around the world are very relaxed about allowing this sort of product into their country, because they can see quite clearly that there's no form of contamination around it. What that means is that with no contamination, it can come into New Zealand from overseas, or in fact we can send it from New Zealand pretty well anywhere in the world. We still have certain protocols we have to meet, but it's much easier than live plants. Once you've actually got some roots on a plant, you've actually got a live plant, you've then got to do something with it. That's once you've determined that you've got a market to sell it to. Then you've got to take that plant with roots on it, and these days we put them into plugs. So what that means, it's a little unit, and very easy to transfer that unit into a bigger unit. In the interim, we're hand potting everything, Why that is because to produce our 3 million plants, we've got to grow 900 different varieties of plant in New Zealand for that market. If we were in the United States, we might grow 50 varieties, and we'd be really, really good at those 50 varieties. We have to adapt 800 different types of plant that each like something a bit different to basically the same environment. In this particular case, we're pan-potting native plants here, and we would expect to sell those in 6 to 8 months' time. Over on the other side, we've got cuttings. We've got cuttings being made, and that's just a fast as you can thing. Once again, it's a knowledge situation where every plant requires slightly different techniques. So it's adapting to that particular material of the plant, the state of its growth, and what that particular plant needs. So it might be a woody plant, like a hedge line, like a cypress, or it might be a soft thing like a petunia, for example. You're still making cuttings, but they need quite different expertise in how you handle it.
Hello again. Before the break, we met Malcolm Woolmore of Lyndale Nurseries, a specialist propagation nursery based in Whenuapai. The business is a wide-ranging one, with plant and product lines inspired by a number of sources and destined for both domestic and international markets.
Native plants are really important to us, and this is our bread and butter. We're just sorting out some orders here as what's going on here. But right in front of us is an agapanthus, which is kind of the antithesis of a New Zealand native plant for many, the scourge of the environment, we're told. So nursery industry has listened to that criticism of agapanthus, which is quite valid. And what we've done is got alongside local authorities and tried to work out ones that are sterile, so they're not going to be a threat to those sensitive eco areas, which agapanthus certainly are at the moment. This is a case in point. This happens to have a variegated leaf, this one. Variegations aren't everyone's cup of tea in New Zealand, but overseas they're huge because they add all year colour. And this particular agapanthus has got a bright navy blue flower, and that is very sought after. So we're onto a winner here, and we think that New Zealanders will get round to love this again too. And so we're bulking this one up, meaning we're trying to produce as many as we can. And in a matter of a couple of years, we think that the New Zealanders market will be embracing this because it's sterile, won't be a threat to the environment, has extra big flowers, it's got a lot of things that tick the boxes. The potting mix business came about because we started making our own potting mix for all the 3 million plants we grow. So we like to do that, so we had total control of the ingredients and what was in it, and that's quite important to us. So we built up quite a lot of expertise over 30 odd years that we've been doing that. Other nurseries around here started to ask us for doing that for them too, which we were very happy to do. And it turned into quite a considerable little business. So I formed a new company which specialises in making that. We realised quite early on that the product that we were making commercially was somewhat better than you could buy in most retail outlets. Some of our friends started saying, why don't you put it in bags so we can take it home? So we thought, well, why don't we? So we came up with a good name, which happened to be my wife's maiden name, Tully, and because it sounds kind of earthy and Irish and all those good things. So Tully's potting blends, we call them potting blends as opposed to potting mixes, but Tully's potting blends were born. It's difficult to grow the nursery any bigger than what it is without starting to compete with our customers, i.e. growing the plants to a bigger stage. So we started looking at how we could make the turnover of the company bigger by accelerating some of those departments, if you like the soil mixing department. So that's where we've got to, and hence the intellectual property business for exporting.
The export side of Lyndale Nurseries has evolved into a new company called Kiwi Flora. It works with breeders to develop, protect and export new plant varieties. In this enterprise, Malcolm works in partnership with Danish-born Morten Damsted.
Kiwi Flora takes the plant breeders' genetics overseas. So at Lyndale, they propagate and sell within New Zealand. We have likewise overseas nurseries like Lyndale and sometimes much bigger, who then grows the plants and sell to their market. And for every plant that they sell, they return us a royalty that we then in turn share with the breeder. There's a range of ways of getting them into Europe and USA or the rest of the world. And one of them is the tissue culture option you have looked at with Malcolm. Other one is simply by sending a cutting or a division of a plant. And from there, The grower overseas then multiply and to have enough stock to then sell to the market. International customers are interested in anything new and unique. You've got to have something new in your catalogue every year, and that is what we provide. The challenges, one is getting them overseas and them surviving the trip, and the other one is then getting in front of the people who make the decisions on what they want to put to market. This plant I hold in my hand here is an Adena, and this was found in Nelson by a nurseryman there, and he saw this amongst a batch of 10,000, and he thought this was unique in its colour. So the uniqueness about this is it keeps the colour through the year, where others, they go green and pale in the summer. So that's obviously very saleable. You have the red burgundy through the year. This is our new rock star, as you might call it. It's actually an Australian native plant, very drought tolerant. And in the States where they regionally have huge droughts and short of water-wise plants has become the next new thing. So again, we try to provide a solution to a problem via plants. It was found in Australia amongst, again, another big batch of plants, and this one stood out. And from there, it's been developed from one single division to we now have over 100,000. The uniqueness is the variegated and the foliage. Usually these are green. Very few of them comes through to type like this one does. So it's very striking at the same time water-wise. It's being released in USA in, next year and Europe the following year. What you have here is an Astelia, and this one is called the Silver Shadow because of its foliage colour. It was found in a nursery in Christchurch. It's actually a native plant to New Zealand. The uniqueness about this plant is that we found a market in Europe as an indoor potted plant. And that is significant because then you're talking volume. And volume means more royalty dollars back to the breeder in New Zealand. I've just been away for a month in Europe, travelling to several countries, at shows and had talks to various retailers and growers. And that's where you show them you've got to get in front of those people, and that's what we're good at. So that's how you do it.
What's next? Well, we've still got a lot of development work with the potting mix. I think the proof's in the pudding with the plants that we grow. They're all very healthy, and that knowledge we're now in a position to pass on to the home gardener too. What happens after that? Well, watch this space.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.